What happens when your world doesn't just fall apart, it evaporates, without warning, like it was never real to begin with. It started with a whisper, a sentence that floated through the air and struck like thunder. You should know what you believed was never true. Have you ever stood in a room so quiet, so painfully silent, that even your heartbeat feels like a scream? That's where I stood. For walls, a shattered photo frame. My reflection in the broken glass stared back at me, hollow-eyed, not because of what was gone, but because of what was never real in the first place. People think losing everything means losing money, a house, or a job. But no. The worst loss is when you lose your sense of reality, when you realize every smile, every hug, every promise was a well-dressed lie. And the moment the mask slips, you're left not with anger, but with nothing. Just silence. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat on the edge of my bed, my hands trembling over a letter I wasn't supposed to find. A letter that held the truth, but only because someone lied to cover it for too long. Do you know what's cruel? Not the betrayal, not the lies, but the realization that while you were building your life around someone, they were building an exit. And all it took was one slip, one sentence, one uncovered truth, and suddenly, the entire timeline of your memories felt like fiction. I had trusted too deeply, believed too blindly, and in doing so, I had handed over the keys to my peace to someone who didn't know how to protect it. That's when I realized the truth doesn't always arrive as a savior. Sometimes it comes dressed as a mistake, a lie, a betrayal, and you don't even notice the truth until it kicks the door open and stares you in the face like a ghost you buried long ago. But I want to take you back. Not just to the moment I found out, but to the quiet ache that led up to it. The red flags I ignored, the questions I swallowed, the nights I lay awake convincing myself that love means forgiving what feels wrong. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt the truth before you knew it? Because I did. In whispers, in the silence after a conversation, in the way they avoided eye contact just a second too long. My soul knew before my mind did. But I didn't want to believe it. Not then. This isn't a story about heartbreak. This isn't about revenge or even justice. This is about how being stripped of everything you thought was true sometimes leads you to the only truth that ever mattered. I thought I was ruined, left with nothing. But I was wrong. The lie, the betrayal, the breaking, it was the beginning of the unveiling. A peeling back of illusion, layer by layer, until I finally saw me. Before the storm, there was calm, at least that's what I used to believe. I want you to meet someone. Her name was Aliyah. Quiet strength lived in her eyes, and softness lingered in her voice. To the outside world, she was someone who had it all together, structured life, stable job, a partner she trusted with everything. She was the kind of person who gave more than she received, who loved harder than she was ever loved back. But what people didn't see was the girl who over-apologized. The woman who stayed up late, overthinking every word she said in fear of being misunderstood. The one who kept forgiving because she thought loyalty meant endurance, not self-respect. Aliyah had grown up with the kind of heart that made room for everyone, often at the expense of herself. From childhood, she learned to read between the lines, to sense shifts in tone, to overcompensate when others were cold. It made her an empath, a giver, but also made her the perfect target for someone who saw kindness as weakness. And then came Zion. He wasn't loud or aggressive. He was composed, intelligent, and knew exactly how to say the right thing at the right time. That's what made him dangerous. He saw Aliyah and knew she'd believe in potential over patterns. That she'd ignore her own intuition if it meant keeping peace. At first, Zion was attentive. The kind of man who remembered the little things. Her favorite tea, the book she'd casually mentioned, the song she said reminded her of her childhood. Aliyah thought she had found safety. Someone who saw her, listened to her, held her hand when the world got too loud. But slowly, the temperature changed. It didn't happen in loud arguments. It happened in subtle withdrawals. Missed calls. Excuses. Replaced presence. There were months where Aliyah felt like she was sharing space with a stranger who wore Zion's face. And every time she asked, "Is something wrong?" he'd smile and say, "Don't overthink, Aliyah. You're just being sensitive again." That sentence became her inner voice. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Aliyah's best friend, Samra, had noticed. She'd seen the way Aliyah flinched when Zion walked in the room. Not because he hurt her physically, but because his silence was so loud, it drowned everything else. "Why do you look like you're holding your breath around him?" Samra had asked once. Aliyah had laughed. Forced. Soft. "I'm not. He's just stressed. It'll pass." But deep down, she knew the version of Zion she had fallen in love with was already gone. The truth is, Aliyah's entire personality was shaped around keeping others comfortable. From her family, she had learned that being good meant being agreeable. So, in relationships, she mirrored that. She adjusted, bent, adapted, always made room for others, without ever checking if there was still space left for herself. Zion hadn't started out with bad intentions. But people who hide things often start by hiding from themselves. And in doing so, they drag others into their chaos. There were signs. Late-night calls he walked away to take. Locked phones. Random mood swings. Sudden disappearances blamed on emergencies. But Aliyah wanted to believe in love more than she wanted to see the truth. So she lied to herself daily, until the lie grew too big to hold. One evening, while Zion was in the shower, his phone buzzed. Over and over again. Not the usual soft notification of a friend or colleague, but a string of frantic messages. Her hands didn't move at first. She just stared at the screen, reading what little she could from the previews. A name she didn't recognize. Sentences that stung. "I can't believe you're still lying to her. She deserves to know. You promised you would end it. Stop playing both sides." Her fingers trembled. She didn't unlock the phone. She didn't need to. Because in that moment, the truth didn't just whisper, it screamed. And all the little pieces that never made sense before, they fell into place. Zion came out of the shower humming, like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't been building two lives behind one door. And Aliyah, silent, still holding the phone, simply said, "We need to talk." But even then, she wasn't angry. She was heartbroken, not because she lost him, but because she lost herself trying to keep him. That's who Aliyah was. The kind of soul who gave people the benefit of the doubt even after they tore pages out of her story. That night didn't end in screaming. It ended in silence. Aliyah didn't ask him to explain, because the truth was already in the room. What came after was the real battle, not with Zion, but with herself. Who was she now? A woman who had been lied to, gaslight, emotionally starved. She stood in front of the mirror and didn't recognize the eyes staring back. But that's when the journey truly began. Aliyah stood at the edge of two worlds, the one she had built through trust and the one that had just crumbled beneath her feet. That night, after Zion's lies finally surfaced, she didn't cry, not immediately. She stared at the ceiling in the dark, trying to process the weight of what she now knew. Her heartbeat was calm, almost too calm, as if her body was in survival mode, sparing her the emotional flood for now. But in the morning, the silence hit different. The bed beside her was empty. His side still had the indentation of his weight, but Zion was gone. Not just physically, but from every layer of her trust. She walked into the kitchen. His coffee mug was still on the counter. The smell of his cologne lingered in the air. And then, like a dam breaking, the tears came. Raw. Silent. Angry. Aliyah hadn't just been betrayed by Zion. She had been betrayed by the version of herself that kept making excuses for him. But she wasn't ready to give up completely, not yet. A part of her still wanted answers, closure, clarity. Something. So she sent a message. "We need to talk properly. I deserve honesty." Zion replied a few hours later. "I'll come by after work. Please don't overreact." Overreact? That single word was enough to send a chill through her chest. Even now, even after the deception was exposed, he wanted her to stay small, stay quiet, stay manageable. But something inside Aliyah had already shifted. Later that evening, he arrived. Same smug confidence. Same casual tone. Aaliyah, he said, placing his keys on the table. You're making this bigger than it is. She didn't speak. He continued. I messed up, okay? But it's not what you think. I was confused. Things were rough between us, and You lied, she said softly, cutting him off. His mouth opened, then closed. She had never interrupted him before. You looked me in the eyes every day, made me feel guilty for suspecting you, and told me I was just overthinking. But you were lying. Constantly. He sighed, rubbed the back of his neck, and said, I didn't mean to hurt you. And that's when she finally broke.
No.
You meant to get away with it. The room fell into a dangerous stillness. Zion wasn't used to this version of Aaliyah, the one who saw him clearly, without filters or forgiveness. He tried to stay in touch. Sent her late-night messages. Said he missed her. Called her his best friend and his person. But Aaliyah didn't reply. Because, truthfully, she wasn't grieving him. She was grieving the time, the love, and the faith she had poured into someone who never deserved her trust. Still, the battle within her raged on. She would wake up in the middle of the night, wondering, was I not enough? Did I push him away somehow? Maybe if I had just. But with time, those thoughts began to fade. Not because the pain was gone, but because she was finally choosing herself. Until one day she got a call. Not from Zion. From the other woman. Her name was Hiba. She sounded nervous, her voice shaky. I know I shouldn't be calling, but I thought you deserved to know. Aaliyah froze. Hiba continued. I didn't know about you at first. He told me you were just a friend. Then, later, he said you were the one who wouldn't let go. Her heart dropped. He said what? That you were possessive. That you were mentally unstable. That he was just trying to help you move on. Aaliyah sat down. It wasn't just lies he told her. It was lies he told about her. Hiba sighed. I left him last week. I saw through it eventually. But I wanted to say,
I'm sorry.
You didn't deserve that. When the call ended, Aaliyah didn't cry. She laughed. A cold, shocked, bitter laugh. Because for so long, she had been made to question her reality. To suppress her instincts. To doubt her own heart. And now the truth wasn't just knocking, it was banging on the door. Aaliyah changed after that. Not overnight. Not in grand, dramatic ways. But in the small things that mattered most. She stopped apologizing for being emotional. She stopped shrinking to make space for people who only took from her. She started saying no, without explaining herself. And most importantly, she stopped waiting for closure from those who broke her. But just when she thought the worst was over, Zion showed up again. Not through a text. Not through a call. But in person, uninvited, standing at her doorstep with a bouquet of white lilies. I've changed, he said. I've been seeing a therapist. I've realized how badly I messed up. He looked thinner. More tired. Less arrogant. I want to make things right. Can we try again? Aaliyah stared at the flowers. Then at him. And then, in a voice steadier than even she expected, she said,
No.
He blinked. No. You didn't love me. You loved the way I loved you. You loved having someone who would never question you, never challenge you. Zion looked stunned. She stepped forward. You were never confused. You were calculated. You lied because you didn't want to lose your comfort. But now you've lost your power. He opened his mouth to speak, but Aaliyah gently closed the door. Not out of hate, but out of healing. A few months later, Aaliyah sat in a cafe, sipping tea, journaling in peace. Her smile was different now, less about being polite, more about being real. She didn't need someone else to complete her anymore, because she had become whole again by walking through the fire, not around it. And she finally understood something. It wasn't Zion's lie that destroyed her. It was her silence in the face of it that nearly did. But not anymore. Now, her truth was louder than any lie. The days following Zion's rejection were like walking through a fog. Aaliyah felt lost but, paradoxically, more alive than ever. The lie that had once shattered her world had become the catalyst for her rebirth. Her friends noticed the change. Where once there was a cautious, uncertain girl, now stood someone stronger, someone who no longer sought approval but commanded respect. One evening, as she sat by the window in her small apartment, the phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Can we talk? It's important." Her heart skipped. For a moment, the old hope flared inside. But she was cautious now, no longer ready to dive into the same storm twice. She typed back, "Who is this?" The reply came quickly. "It's Zion's brother, Amir." Her fingers hesitated. Meeting Amir was the turning point she hadn't expected. He arrived with a heavy expression, a folder in hand. "I'm sorry for intruding," he began, "but there's something you need to see." He handed her photos, pictures of Zion with different women, documents revealing financial lies, and a message thread where Zion confessed everything to a friend. The truth was deeper and darker than Aliyah had imagined. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. "Because I want you to know the full story. Zion's not the man you thought he was. He used you and others for his gain." Tears welled up, but Aliyah felt a strange relief. At last, the truth was out. Not just half-truths or excuses, but the raw, painful reality. Armed with this new knowledge, Aliyah felt an unstoppable strength. She reached out to Zion one last time. Meeting in the same cafe where they had once dreamed of a future, Aliyah sat calmly as Zion arrived, nervous and uncertain. "I know everything now," she said firmly, sliding the folder across the table. He looked through the evidence, his face paling. "You lied to me. Not just about us. About everything," she said. "Why?" Zion's voice cracked. "I was scared. I didn't want to lose control." Aliyah shook her head. "You lost more than control. You lost me." Then she looked directly into his eyes. "This is the end." Zion stood up, speechless, and walked. In the weeks that followed, Aliyah focused on healing herself. Therapy sessions helped her unpack years of pain and self-doubt. She discovered a passion for writing and began sharing her story anonymously online. Messages poured in, from strangers who had faced betrayal and found hope in her words. Her healing became a beacon for others. One morning, walking through a park, Aliyah felt a lightness she hadn't known in years. A child's laughter echoed nearby, reminding her of innocence and new possibilities. Aliyah smiled, realizing she wasn't defined by her past. She was defined by how she chose to rise. Life taught Aliyah a powerful lesson. Sometimes, the lies we uncover hurt deeply, but they also shine a light on the truth we need to see, about others and about ourselves. She realized that being left with nothing was, in fact, a chance to rebuild everything. The emptiness gave her room to grow, to find strength she never knew existed, and to finally embrace the truth without fear. Her journey wasn't just about betrayal or heartbreak. It was about reclaiming her own story. So now, as you listen to this tale, ask yourself, the hardest battles are often fought within, against doubt, fear, and self-deception. But remember, the greatest victory is choosing to rise above those struggles with courage and grace. If Aliyah's story teaches us anything, it's this: truth is not just something others reveal to us. It's something we uncover inside ourselves through strength, forgiveness, and hope. So, what will you do when your truth is finally revealed? Will you hide, or will you rise?